Hey everyone, welcome back to RPG America. My name's Andrew, and today we're going to be going over my RECCE build, which is going to be a PSA lower with a Midway USA upper that has been upgraded in a lot of ways, followed by an Onward Research RECCE rig that's also had some stuff added to it, and finally the Save Your Equipment SEMA bag, not the competition, not the pro one or whatever, just the smaller sized one because I didn't need a pack quite that large for my use case. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into the rifle setup and why I chose those parts for this rifle. Alright, and just to make the people at home happy, we'll eject the magazine. Of course, I'll just sit it on the floor and this towards everybody so we can see we are clear. Okay, so let's go ahead and just start off with the fun stuff. So the fun stuff is of course going to be this optic that's on the top, the optic setup, which is the red dot is just a super cheap little CV Life red dot. It's a China optic, but they work because I used to have actually only on this rifle, all I had was a CV Life multi-reticle red dot or reflex sight, whatever they called the dumb thing, but it worked pretty well. Never had any issues. It held zero. All the reticles worked, so yeah. This one was a little bit more expensive than that one. This one was about $70, and it has motion activation. Yeah, there we go. As you can see, it's motion activated, so I don't have to press any buttons to get it on, which is what I prefer for all of my optics. And it does automatically shut itself off after, I think after 10 or 15 minutes of no use, but yeah, so the battery doesn't run out super quick. I believe it's advertised as having 10,000 hours of battery life, 10 or 20,000, I can't remember right now. It just uses a super basic CR2032, which is the exact same battery that the SIG optic that I have uses. And again, similarity in battery types I definitely prefer, because then I only have to buy one type of product instead of multiple. All right, now let's get into the SIG Tango MSR. It is a 1 to 10. I personally prefer second focal plane because since I have the red dot, that'll have me set for at least 100 yards, if not 200, if I really want to push my luck with it. But you'll see right now, I have it on the lowest magnification setting at the moment, which is the 1x. But what I normally do is once that covers off for that red dot, I immediately will turn it all the way up. And I also, if it's during the daytime, I'm just going straight to the brightest setting on the reticle, and then it is all set to go. And this is going to be super difficult to see, especially when the lens covers aren't off. And yes, I do leave them on, but you'll see this reticle pretty bright, all things considered, because that's just, again, it's a single CR2032 is the battery. Now, the big downside to this optic is that the battery life, it's not great. It's not great. It's probably like 10 hours max, and that's really pushing it. I would say 10 hours in warm weather, probably more like 7 or 8 in cold weather. I left this on overnight, and it was a particularly cold night for where I live, and I could tell in the morning it was quite dim because I left it on the brightest setting by accident because I'm used to motion activated, not having to turn stuff on manually. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you get one of these optics. I'm assuming for every single one of them except for the one that the Army uses or whatever, the 6T. That one I'm sure is much better quality, especially because it's well over $1,000. But with these ones that are about 600 and below, I actually got this one for a pretty good price. I got it for $515, so I was quite happy about that. It wasn't a Black Friday sale. It was actually around Christmas time that I picked this one up. But with that said, since they're sub $1,000, I guess SIG decided to put more towards the actual glass and the build quality and whatnot, rather than putting it into battery life and that sort of stuff. But it works great. So, with that out of the way for optics, we will come back to talking about optics in a little bit. But what I want to do now is move on to discussing the other parts that I have on this rifle. So, at the very top, I have just a Strike Industries 4-prong flash hider. Does the job. Love it. Mag pull, quick disconnects with the Onward Research sling. Magpul grips, foregrip, and pistol grip. Almost forgot about this. The rail is a AT3 tactical wad rail. I believe it is the 13.5-inch version. Yeah, I can still see my caliber and whatnot in the twist rate. This is a 5.56, of course, and it is a 1-in-8 twist for that. All right, and then of course we have the light up here. It is just a Streamlight ProTac rail mount 1, older style light, kind of sorta, not super old, but it gets the job done. The tape switch is just the one that comes with it, and the mount is a cheap Amazon one that as long as you just torque it down to about 25 inch-pounds, then it's going to stay put. Just make sure to do that, otherwise your tape switch will move around a ton. And that's true with any mount of that sort. Torque it down and probably Loctite it is not a bad idea. All right, moving down a little bit further, we'll talk about the trigger really briefly. This is a single stage Rise Armament Rave 140, or is it RA 140? Whatever the name of it is. I have that in both of my 5.56 AR-15s. Really love them. You can shoot super quickly and super smoothly as well. I don't mind two-stage triggers, but at the same time, give me single stage if I'm on something, a platform like this. This is not particularly made to be super duper, like, perfectly one or less MOA accurate. It's more so meant to be like quick use case, shooting fast, right? That's the main idea for this one. All right, and then moving over to the bolt carrier group. And yes, I did change my dust cover to something that's probably a dog whistle according to retards. But I have a nickel boron bolt carrier group. It is a non-logoed Toolcraft, I believe. I don't think it's a PSA. I believe it's a Toolcraft. But both of them are great. I have a PSA, I think, in my other, in my 300 Blackout, I believe is what's in that one. I'm a big fan of PSA. Enough said there. Next, Magpul CTR stock, which is also what I run on my other 5.56. A lot of the parts on this are on the other 5.56 rifle that I have, which will be in the next video. But I have some changes there too, because it's just preference, really, at the end of the day. The changes I am going to potentially make in the future will be changing this and this. I like these a lot, but I recently started using the B5 grips, the Bravo Systems, whatever the name of the company is. That one has a more aggressive grip texture, and I'm a huge fan of that because it gets hot where I live, and not only hot but super humid. So the hotter the temperature, the more grip texture I want, because then if I don't have gloves on for whatever reason and I start, gonna sweat no matter what when it's like 90 plus degrees out. So when that happens, it's definitely helpful to have stuff that you can really hold on to and not have to worry about it slipping whatsoever. All right, and I believe that is everything minus the charging handle latch. It's just a Strike Industries extended. Super, super normal. Nothing extra fancy there. Okay, so that's everything about the rifle. Now, let's get into the reticle for the optic. So we'll set this aside. Okay, so now I'm going to put up on screen the actual BDC-10 reticle, which is what Sig Sauer calls it. Bullet drop compensating reticle. The reason it's 10 is because it works with the 10 zoom, which, in all honesty, all of them are pretty much the same. There's only slight marginal differences, I believe, but since this is at second focal point, I think they all essentially operate the same. They have the same MOA markings, but I'm looking right now. I wrote for myself a few notes that none of y'all can read, but because I have horrible handwriting. But I'm going to talk about where stuff is going to be distance-wise as well as windage-wise. Okay, so on my little diagram I have here, and I'll put a picture of the reticle around here. So the middle dot in the horseshoe reticle is, of course, that's going to be 100 yards because that's what this is made for. Has nothing to do with the fact that it has to be 100 because of the cartridge. It has to be 100 because that's what this reticle is made for. Big difference. Big difference. At the bottom of the horseshoe is about 200 yards, maybe a little bit less, because I am using 62 grain ammunition, specifically M855, of course. So marginal difference, not much of one from 55 grain. Moving to the first hash mark, which is 5.04 MOA, that is going to be about 325 to 350 yards. I, just to be safe, say 350 because I did 2 different calculation checks in 2 different apps. I did Hornady's app and the other one that's really popular, but it costs money to use. I can't recall the name of it off the top of my head, but that one said 350. The Hornady app said actually 327 for 5.06, but in the Hornady app, you can't put in your barrel length, whereas with the other one I could. So we'll say 350 because that's what the other one said. All right, moving down to the next hash mark. This is the second one, 450 yards, so 100-yard difference. Makes sense. Third hash line is also another 100 yards, so 550. And at this point, like, probably shouldn't even bother shooting at whatever it is, just switch to a DMR, but we'll keep going. The fourth hash line, the horizontal one, of course, is going to be 625. Next one, so now we're only moving in increments of 75. So number 5 now is going to be 700 yards. And then, because this one is a little bit lower than as far as MOA markings go, the last hash line is actually 785 yards, so really closer to 800 is what I have in parentheses. But 785 is exact. 800 is like you probably will hit it, hopefully. But again, this is only for a 5.56. I will never be shooting 5.56 past 550 yards. I don't see that happening. I also don't see it being a good idea when you can just have a buddy have a DMR or you have a DMR and then just have that guy shoot once it's getting past 500 yards. Really, in all honesty, 450 is really pushing it. And where I live at, the nice thing is where I live at, we really don't have that much wind, but at the same time, still want to have all of these markings. Just never know where you might be if you need to shoot out that far. Next thing I want to talk about with this reticle. So you notice the 3 triangles on either side of the horseshoe. Those represent something moving toward, or I guess moving away from. It's hard to explain, but essentially if something is moving, I believe the first triangle represents something moving at 5 miles an hour, then 10 miles an hour, then 15 miles an hour. So first triangle, second triangle, third triangle, 5, 10, 15, something like that. That's probably not correct, probably not exact, but again, that's just according to what other people have said. The likelihood I'll need that, basically 0, unless we have an invasion, but let's be honest, not happening. Okay, next, on the first hash mark where the 350 is marked, to the right of that and the left are those diamonds. I believe they're diamonds. I'm going to double check. Or just dots. Just dots. So with those dots, those are for windage. So the very first dot is going to be 10 mile an hour wind. Same with the one that's on the right side next to the first. These are next to the first hash mark. So 350 yards, 10 mile an hour wind. You'll aim there. Going to the next hash line. The first dot on the left or the right, depending on which way the wind is blowing, is going to be 5 mile an hour wind. Then the next one is going to be 10 mile an hour wind. This is going off of the apps that I've used. Same thing for the next hash line, which is the third. Same thing for the fourth hash line. Now, for the 5th and 6th hash lines, I personally didn't mark this, but I believe the first one is about 8 mile an hour winds, and then the second one is 15 mile an hour. Then the bottom one is going to be 10 and 20. Again, I think, I'm not 100% sure because I didn't write it down, but like I said, the likelihood I'm going to even go past the 4th hash line when shooting this rifle or the other one is basically 0. Basically 0. Okay, so that's the BDC reticle and how that works. The really important thing to do here, if you get one of these SIG scopes, get a ballistics calculator, get all that info for what your ammo is that you're going to be using. I would say also just spend the like $5 or $6, however much it is, to get the other app, which the name of it escapes me, but get that one because you can throw in your barrel length. I know some people run 5.56 rifles. Some run it with an 18-inch, some with a 20-inch. Very based if you run it 20-inch, which I do plan to get a 20-inch barrel 5.56 at some point in the future, preferably with a Steyr AUG, so that it feels less like it's a 20-inch barrel and more like it's a 16. But anyhow, I digress. So that's the idea there. Make sure that you get all of the information plugged into that calculator, what grain bullet you're going to be using, all the ballistic coefficients that that ammo has, all that stuff. Get it all in there. How fast the bullet's moving coming out of the muzzle, some muzzle velocity. I said that really stupidly, but yeah, that's the idea there. Okay, so that is it for the rifle and the optic. I'm gonna go ahead and actually stop this video here. I think I should, because this is gonna be a long video, otherwise it's gonna be a two-parter. So come back for part 2, which will probably be released right after this video.